collection of connections and intersections. Historic intersections are dramatic events that bring people together, for better or for worse. Events like these change lives and sometimes the course of history. Our story depicts dramatic intersections from Las Vegas's past. It connects some of the city's African American citizens to a number of life-changing events and to each other. For example, the Moulin Rouge Agreement desegregated the city, changing thousands of lives. And the riots of 1969 rocked the entire community to its core. This program reveals how the city's unique history and culture paved the way for these events and helped to define the African American experience in Las Vegas. Our story covers two dynamic decades, from 1950 to the early 1970s.
Slow.
Challenging.
Evolving.
Horrible.
A kaleidoscope of color and hope.
Awesome.
I wasn't going to say terrifying, but hard.
Love. The individuals you'll meet in this program have successfully navigated through some of the most turbulent times in Las Vegas's history. They represent the thousands of African Americans who migrated to the city in the 1950s and 60s. Their perspectives vary as much as their personal histories. Our story begins with the booms that brought many of them here.
Las Vegas was a boomtown in the 40s with the building of the BMI plant and the creation of Henderson and the Las Vegas Gunnery School, which is now Nellis. It was a boomtown. We were a boomtown again in the 50s with the construction of all these new resorts.
But boomtown didn't mean big town. In the 1950s, Las Vegas was a relatively small city with loads of charisma, a little sparkle, and big aspirations. Only a few casinos dotted the landscape, but excitement and opportunity were fueling a mass migration. A migration that included thousands of African Americans.
A lot of African Americans throughout the United States felt like this place was paved in gold, and they wanted a better opportunity for themselves and their families. And so they came here in droves.
They arrived in a city supposedly paved in gold, bearing big dreams and all they held dear.
We moved to Las Vegas August 1964, and we came from the Navajo Indian Reservation in Kayenta, Arizona. So we used to visit Las Vegas, and we liked it so well, I say, let's apply with the school district. So we did, and we got 2 contracts in the mail. So we were excited to come to Las Vegas.
Coming from a reservation to, a metropolitan area and bright lights, which was exciting.
Eva's family migrated to Las Vegas in the early 1950s. She remembers her first day here like it was yesterday.
I remember getting up that morning, looking out of the front door, and a blast of heat slapped me in my face. The desert looked absolutely dead, bleached white. The plants all looked dead, and I was very shocked by that.
My family migrated to Las Vegas in 1955, so we drove here from Michigan to Las Vegas, Nevada. I was probably 9 years old, and like I said, we drove here. So when we hit Las Vegas, it was early evening. The sun was going down, and My father turned on D Street, and we were driving down D Street, and I guess I had been sleeping. And I woke up, and he said, "Jamila, we're here. We're in Las Vegas," you know. I looked around at Las Vegas and went hysterical. I broke out in absolute tears.
Jarmila was getting her first look at the west side of Las Vegas. It would be her new home. This small, segregated area of town was where all of Las Vegas's African Americans were forced to live in the 1950s and 60s. And it certainly didn't shine like the casinos downtown.
So we're coming down D Street, and there are no sidewalks, there are no street lights, there are no big houses, there are no trees. It was just, it was a shock.
Oh, it was just like country, just like where I left from, but the conditions was better. We wasn't picking cotton or hoeing cotton. I think I was hoeing cotton when I came here in 51. And my aunt told me to go on out there and get you a job and work, and I did. And I've been working ever since.
The opportunity for work attracted many migrants, but there were others drawn to Las Vegas for very different reasons. Some were a matter of life and death.
We came from New York, my mom did. She was in an abusive relationship with my dad. My dad was a New York policeman. And my mom, she gathered us up one night, put us on a Greyhound bus, and we escaped. We left and came to Las Vegas. Turned out to be the best move that she could ever make, you know.
My mom left Arkansas when I was a year old, and with my sister, who was 3 years old at the time, and went to Arizona to look for work because she said she was not gonna die working on the farm in Arkansas. She wasn't gonna starve to death working on a farm in Arkansas. Then she somehow wound up in Las Vegas she came to Las Vegas actually to work at the El Rancho Vegas in the pantry.
Well, my dad was here to begin with. He came here to work at the dam. Then my mom came out, was gonna follow him out, but then she had to leave early because her baby brother, got into it. He didn't get off the sidewalk. They lived in Rayville, Louisiana. He didn't get off the sidewalk for a white lady to walk by. So they were coming to hang him that night. And so they stuffed him in a steamer trunk and threw him on the train, and that's how we got here. And I was 2 months old.
The United States radiated racism in the 1950s and 60s. Unfortunately, for thousands of African Americans migrating to Las Vegas, this city offered up more of the same.
It was a nightmare for African Americans. They were, of course, this city was called the Mississippi of the West. Now, I'm from the South, and I have experience about segregation. I have experience about discrimination and racism. And you had that at that level of racism and discrimination in this city.
Really, to me, it was more obvious here than it was even in Deep South. Because when you go in a place and you're asked out, rather than see a sign saying not allowed, what would you rather do? Be asked out or see a sign telling you not to enter? In the South, they had the courtesy to put up signs. You didn't drink water here, or you didn't go to the bathroom here, or you didn't go in this establishment. But here, you went in, you might be thrown out by the bouncer.
In Las Vegas, racism reared its head in the very industry that attracted so many people here, gaming.
African Americans could not go into hotel casinos. If we're talking about the Flamingo and the early hotels on the Las Vegas Strip, we're talking about African Americans going into the back door. Even if you are a major name in the entertainment business, you entered the back door of the casino and you walked through the kitchen to get to the stage area to perform. Workers, of course, do the same thing. And we're talking about back of the house workers.
Back of the house workers, such as maids and cooks, operated behind the scenes. critical but unseen. Very few African Americans worked front of the house jobs like car dealers, waitresses, and porters, the real money-making positions.
We were not even allowed to go on the strip except to clean or to bus. I mean, we couldn't even park the cars. We couldn't even carry the bags inside. Why not? Because those were the better paying jobs. All of those were, I will label them as injustices because Black people didn't have a shot at those positions.
And what drove this injustice?
A lot of the casino bosses did not want to upset Southerners, white Southerners who came here to gamble and to have a good time. They didn't concern themselves with the feelings of the Black community, the African American community in this town. Didn't matter to them. I'm talking about not only the casino bosses, but also the city fathers, I call them, the folks who were the leaders and ran the city.
Business leaders essentially controlled the city. It was they who set the rules, and Las Vegas rules dictated that discrimination was not only tolerated, but cultivated. It's for this reason that most of the city's African Americans spent the majority of their time on the West Side.
Basically, we all lived on the West Side, which was 1.5 miles square. So it was a very small area. We lived together, we worked together, we played together, and we took care of each other. And there was a very strong sense of community, but we all knew each other. And, you know, you didn't have any fears.
Our dentist was in our neighborhood, our MD was in our neighborhood, our churches were there, our schools were there. We had a commercial district with our grocery stores and our shoe shops and our liquor store and our beauty shops, all of the things that we needed to make a community.
The West Side even had its own mini version of the Las Vegas Strip. It was called Jackson Street.
If you were an African American person who wanted to have a night out in the 1950s, you would go to Jackson Street. And if you stayed out long enough, then you could see some entertainment that had just transpired on the Strip, because now Nat King Cole is playing the piano in the Louisiana Club. And Pearl Bailey is entertaining someplace else over there with her friends from the community. So that's where they would go when they would leave the Strip, and they would live at some of the boarding houses.
The West Side was certainly a unique place to live in the 1950s and 60s. It was both dynamic and somewhat deprived. Some say the city was partially to blame because it failed to provide adequate services to the area. Basic things like streetlights and paved roads.
The challenge for the city of Las Vegas during those important 40 and 50 years, it was trying to figure out what it was going to do, not with the West Side, what it was going to do with the Las Vegas Strip.
We never get the monies to take care of West Las Vegas to do what it needed to be done. So that money moved downtown. Fremont got it and everywhere else but West Las Vegas.
Over the years, residents demanded action and were repeatedly denied.
We had to congregate and march, but we wasn't violent in the march. We marched peacefully and went to the city council meeting as numbers to fight for even streetlights.
Las Vegas's African Americans continued to be denied adequate services, access to housing outside of the West Side, to decent employment opportunities, access to casinos and hotels, and to basic civil rights. In 1960, community members once again rose up against the powers that be and demanded a voice, a place at the table. The result? The Moulin Rouge Agreement. The Moulin Rouge Agreement was a momentous effort that legally lifted Jim Crow restrictions in Las Vegas and essentially desegregated the city.
My father was president of the NAACP at the time. He still had his dental office. And I guess he had reached the point, as the other blacks in the community had reached the point, that enough was enough. We can't go on the strip. We can work in the strip. You could be a maid, you could be whatever, but you can't go to a show, you can't go into gamble, you can't go to the lounges.
Jarmilla's father was James McMillan. At the time, Jarmilla worked as a dental assistant in his office. She witnessed civil rights leaders and community members visiting her father. She heard the calls he made to strip bosses. She listened and watched as the Moulin Rouge Agreement took shape around her.
David Hogard, Bob Bailey, these people were they were coming into his office all the time. You would see him, Donald Clark. They come into the office and they would talk about whatever they needed to talk about. Sarah Ann Knight, all of them, LaBertha Johnson, all of them, they would come up to the office. And I guess they just decided they were going to try to get the integration movement started on the Strip. And he had placed calls to the various hotel owners and told them basically that if something didn't happen or something didn't give, in essence, that we were going to march. I was excited, I was like, oh, wow, we get to march.
The adult branch as well as the youth branch of the NAACP were preparing to march on the Strip in 1960 if we hadn't heard that we had gotten some kind of indication from the Strip hotels that they were going to desegregate and hear some of the demands of the black community at that time.
They planned to march, but would they actually need to? Would city leaders acknowledge the threat?
You're talking about Las Vegas, you're talking about big hotels, you're talking about money, you're talking about reputations. And this was a time where the black movement was beginning to was moving. And those hotels, they more than likely didn't want these issues. They didn't want this on national news. They didn't want to have their problems. And my thing would be, Daddy, are we going to march? He said, we're not going to march.
James McMillan was right. They didn't have to march. An agreement between city leaders, casino bosses, and the NAACP was reached the day before it was scheduled to take place.
So the Moulin Rouge Agreement takes place on March 26, 1960. And we call it the Moulin Rouge Agreement because even though the Moulin Rouge, the heyday of the Moulin Rouge had ended years before, that hotel casino opened and closed many times over the years. It was agreed that that would be the location where all of the powers involved in integrating this city would meet on that morning, that Saturday morning, March 26. So in this room at the Moulin Rouge, you have leaders from the African American community that include people like the president of the NAACP, who at that time was James McMillan, the first black dentist. We see the first black doctor in the room, Charles I. West. And you see other people. Lubertha Johnson is in that meeting, and she's the only woman there. But we also see the publisher of the Sun newspaper, Greenspun. We have the mayor of the city, the governor of the state, the chief of police, and other people in charge or in leadership here in the community. They sit down around a table that Saturday morning, and they agree that the Las Vegas Strip and downtown is going to be integrated that evening. I think the decision to integrate the Strip and downtown was made by the owners of casinos. I don't think it could have happened any other way in this city at that time. The city was controlled by business people.
Was business about to change? Would casino bosses honor the Moulin Rouge Agreement?
They had to test it. And my father would say, we got to test this because they're going to say that this is what they're going to do, but if nobody goes out on the Strip to see a show or to have dinner or to go into the lounge to have a drink, then we won't know what's happening. So various people went out to the shows and to test to see if they would let them in. Not only the Strip, this was downtown too. And I remember he took us out to dinner. We went to the Sahara, to the House of Lords. And this was his test, and after that we went back into, we stopped off in a lounge to listen to the Treniers. So that was his thing of, and I imagine they had been out on the Strip and tested it on a more adult level, but this was the way that, we'd get to go.
My husband and I was assigned to the Dunes Hotel. Different couples, Sarah Knight Pretty and her husband, who later owned the Moulin Rouge, was a couple that also was assigned to go. So when we arrived at the Dunes, our first stop was I stopped at the 21 table and my husband went to the crab table. And we placed our money down for change. And they passed us up and didn't ever give us the change. So we were not to argue or say anything. We knew who to ask for after we'd gone through the things we were to try first. So after a while, we walked over to the showroom, got in line like everyone else. They seated us up in the balcony in the back, nosebleed section. So when we were seated there, my husband asked the maitre d', isn't there any other place we can sit? We're too far back. He said, no, this is it. So that's when we asked for Major Rebel. And we threw that name out. He left, and he came back. They discussed it. They brought us down, almost set us on the stage. And we were told and apologized to. When we go out, they were aware what had happened when we came in. We were told we could gamble at any table or drink or at any bar we wanted to when we went out. And we did. We partaked of that.
Testing the Moulin Rouge Agreement was critical to Las Vegas history, and it was extremely brave. Those involved would be some of the first African Americans to be served in Las Vegas casinos.
It was a little nervous, yes, because you never knew what to expect.
Jarmilla's perspective was very different. Her father's test didn't feel like a test to her.
So we're going out on the Strip to dinner. So for him, that may have been a test. For my brother and I, we're going out on the Strip to have a great dinner.
Their tests were successful, but what would have happened had Ruby and her husband Curtis not been served?
We would not have made a fuss of it. We would have asked for the manager as we did in the showroom. And if they did not get them, then we go back to the NAACP body and report what happened. That was the plan. We were not there to be destructive or protest or anything.
There would be no need for protest. Nearly all of the establishments on the Strip honored the rules of the agreement.
I felt good because I felt everything that we had planned and done and the way we went about it was the right way, and to get results, it was very rewarding to me.
In the 1950s and 60s, prejudice permeated every aspect of African American life. Despite the Moulin Rouge Agreement, Black Las Vegans were still often deprived of basic rights and respect. Small steps forward often led to giant leaps backward. Years of discrimination resulted in a powder keg of resentment that eventually exploded.
So the riots of 1969, and I like to call it the revolution. And I'm just going to call it the revolution because it started for a number of reasons, not just one reason. Integration had not taken place. 1964 mandated integration across the country. Equal Rights Amendment, all of that had passed. But no actions were really taken in the way that they should have been. We still had housing segregation, school segregation. We did not have the jobs that we had later on. So all of that was festering in the African American community. So it all came to a boiling point in October of 1969.
While the exact spark that ignited the West Side Uprising is up for dispute, no one contests the fact that it rocked the entire community. In the 1960s, Henry's life was full of contradictions.
I was going to mosque, I was hanging out at the Panthers headquarters, and I was on drugs. So you get that false sense of, I guess you would call it bravado, you know. And you're ready, you know, for anything that goes down.
Henry participated in the West Side riots.
I was not so much about looting and busting up places. I wanted to make a statement. Making a statement, I drew out posters, and me and my buddies would put the posters up in front of people's houses in Cocktail, certain areas, like Cadillac Arms. Put a sign up. The sign that I wrote out was, "Drop the rent, Whitey." The rent in Cadillac Arms was very high for such a poor area, you know. And that's what we wrote, and we threw our little cocktails, you know. Of course, they tore up what they called the Golden West Shopping Center. I didn't get involved in that.
Gene witnessed the riots taking place.
Everybody knew everybody. I mean, you're looking at them going, "Hey, what are you doing out here, so-and-so?"
When the riots started, the police officers came into the community, and one of the things that happened is that the community was actually cordoned off. They brought tanks in from Nellis Air Force Base. So people could not get out of the community, and you could not get in unless you could prove that you actually lived there. So it was a very trying time, a very painful time.
I never realized, you know, how the system had actually created the West Side and boxed it in until that time. It was only 4 roads in to the West Side, period. And they block off those 4 roads. There's no way in or out.
They surrounded us to protect the rest of the community from us.
Leonard also witnessed the riots taking place.
I had just gotten back from Vietnam, and I was a little different than when I had left. And so it was all kind of blurry. And I remember being so upset because of all the stuff all of the action that was happening around me. People screaming and hollering, the police calling up backup.
The scene echoed the turmoil taking place across the country at the time.
They were running up and down the street, screaming and hollering, burning down stuff, you know, chanting. I went home, okay? Because in my opinion, it made no sense. You know, why are you burning up your stuff? Why are you burning up your house? That's the way I thought about it. So I thought you were being just as crazy.
I consider myself very fortunate because I don't know what happened if I would have gotten caught. I remember burning my thumb on one of the cocktails, but they made a curfew. They made a curfew at 10 o'clock, and I was driving. I had cocktails and signs in the back of my car. I had a Cadillac. And the police stopped me. And you know what they did? They said, "You go straight home. It's curfew." I said, "Yes, sir." Oh, and made it straight home, took that stuff out and got rid of it.
It took days for local police, military personnel, and community members to bring an end to the West Side riots. The area was left in shambles. Remnants of the destruction lingered along the streets like angry monuments. People were killed, arrested, and some area businesses were damaged. Witnesses and those who observed the aftermath share different takes on what the West Side riot accomplished.
It affected a great deal because we have lost our incentive. We have lost our values in our community because of the riot. Now we don't have what we had before. Now we're gonna have to go out our community to have access to anything, clothes, food, and things of that nature.
I was disappointed because the rioting caused black businesses to leave. So that put people out of work in the West Side area. But maybe it put things on people's mind that's causing the segregation, and let them know people were tired and was not going to stand by and allow it to happen anymore. It brought about awareness, I think.
I think it heightened awareness, and I don't only think it heightened awareness in the black community, but I think it did for some people in the white communities also.
When you burn down the area that you live in, what do you accomplish? Except anger. You know, it was just anger and hurt and, you know, what do you do? And I'm sure a lot of it was that the people felt, they felt helpless, and you lash out.
After that riot, the area had become off limits when it comes to whites now, and they started, you know, with other outlying areas where whites began to move from out of here into other outlying areas. Properties then in that side of town all began to lose its investments, lose the management, and become just there boarded up. The community wasn't able to pick up behind itself.
After the uprising, some people and businesses left the West Side. The community suffered. At the same time, another issue, a positive issue, enticed people to move away from the area. Housing integration. After decades of discrimination, some African Americans were finally allowed to purchase homes beyond the West Side. Integration in housing was a massive step forward.
Integration is important for all human beings. And I've been an advocate over the years of saying this. We have a moral obligation to live together as human beings. We can no longer divorce ourselves and polarize ourselves in our housings, in our homes, that sort of thing.
Housing integration was critical, but it did not come without its problems.
There was negative effect, loss of black businesses, African Americans moving out of the community, African Americans not, patronizing the black businesses, black-owned businesses.
This migration left a hole in the West Side community, a hole that's expanded over the years.
All the older people that used to keep up the homes and things, they died out and left it to their kids, and the kids didn't do nothing. I just say didn't pay the taxes or nothing. So if you don't pay the taxes or your insurance and thing, it'll get away from you.
As the elders were passing, the younger generation did not have the same drive that the elders had. And so the younger generation chose to move out of the community because, when you're earning so much money, you can live where you want to live. And there wasn't any development going on right in the neighborhood. So it became just a little bit more decayed than it was before.
Housing integration, the riots, and other issues took a big bite out of the West Side. It proved how difficult change can be. But something positive was just around the corner for the entire black community. In 1971, there was a legal action that provided hope and change to the local job market. This action was called the Consent Decree.
The Consent Decree was trying to do a couple of things. It was trying to make sure that African Americans finally could work, right, in high-paying jobs in these casinos. Because at one time, they had no opportunities. These casinos, even after the Moulin Rouge Agreement, still discriminated against black workers. So the decree was just trying to make sure that the unions, they were trying to ensure that the resort association would do the right thing by these workers, to train them, to put them out front, to ensure that you could see a black face in their casinos.
Well, the consent decree said basically that every hotel would honor the fact that since the black population was 12% of the whole population, that in every job category, they would try to hire and train black people until they got 12% of the help in that category black. So it opened up wonderful possibilities for work, and not just work, but a wide vista of work.
It was a class action suit that brought about the consent decree. You have to have somebody go up against someone else in order to get something like that done. And so there were 12 of them, and they were all waiters and bartenders and everything like that who were being hired as barbacks, busboys, what have you. And they have to sit with years of experience. And so they brought the class action suit against I think there were 7 hotels and the Culinary Union. My father was one of the 12 who was on the class action suit. Now, the interesting thing is they didn't hire them. That's how we ended up in business for ourselves. Their payback was, we may have to hire, but we don't have to hire you. And they didn't.
Jean's father and the other 11 men involved in the suit weren't hired in the prime positions that they'd fought so hard for. But their determination helped change the face of the local job market. African Americans were no longer limited to back-of-the-house jobs.
After the consent decree passed, the NAACP is responsible for monitoring this document. So how do you prove then that these casinos are actually hiring people? So the NAACP, for a short time, as long as they could, they monitored the activities of some of the casinos to make sure that there were African American people on the floor actually doing some of the jobs that they could now do. So we see African American women becoming more and more cocktail waitresses and dealers, and then we see them going into mid-level management jobs, men and women into mid-level management jobs.
Jackie was one of these new managers. She credits the consent decree and her own determination with achieving a high-level position at the Desert Inn Casino in the early 70s. Before being hired, she'd worked with the Clark County School District. Her path to administration began with a job interview.
From what I can remember, there were about 30 people that applied for the job. And I went in there and I asked the question. I said, does my skin color have anything to do with this job? I mean, would it be an imposition to hire me because I'm African American? I posed the question. And they got defensive and said, oh, no, what makes you think that? I said, well, no, I just want to get it out front. I just want to ask the question. I said, because, it seems to me that there's a lot going on right now, and I'm just wondering, but I really would like that opportunity. I wouldn't let you down. And anyway, it was 2 days later that I was told that I had the job. And once I put my foot in the door, it was like history, because I had a lot of creative ideas.
Jackie received some training and then managed to leapfrog her way up the ladder.
When I started off, I was the secretary for both the entertainment director and the publicity and advertising director. There were I was the secretary for both directors. And then they left. So they had a few directors that came in, and the one director that came in over me worked with me for about a year, and then he left. So by de facto, I became the director of advertising and public relations there at the hotel.
Jackie's new position came with serious responsibility, a role she relished.
So that was my role, to work with the entertainers as well as with the advertising agency to accomplish all of the events, and then to publicize them and to handle the press and do the rundown, which was you do the press releases and you had a certain time to do them and get them to the papers before the Friday entertainment came out the following week.
At the time, there were few African Americans, especially women, in the gaming industry who achieved Jackie's level of success. John was another Las Vegan who landed an excellent job in the gaming industry thanks to the consent decree and his amazing talent, a talent that served him well in an arena typically closed to African Americans. That arena was Baccarat, a game known for its exclusivity. At the time, Baccarat was a rich white man's game, but that didn't stop John from getting in on it. He trained in a class implemented by the Economic Opportunity Board and was soon out looking for a job. His search began at the Stardust, where he found a manager and inquired about a position.
He says, well, the guy that's over the Baccarat, he's upstairs. His name is Frank Rosenthal. Take the elevator, go upstairs and ask for Frank Rosenthal. And I go up, and it's like, Mr. Rosenthal, I'm John Edmond. I want to be a Baccarat dealer.
Frank Lefty Rosenthal was not only a casino executive, he was also a professional sports bettor and organized crime associate. On that day, he was John's ticket into the world of Baccarat. But first, he had to try out for the job.
Now, I did the session. And, now it was time for me to go back to work. And so I went to Mr. Rosenthal. He says, yeah, kid, you look good there. But, we've already hired all the dealers. But I tell you what you do. You go to Harrison Frank and let them do your tuxedo size. Man, I walked outside of the Stardust, and they had that Toyota commercial back in the day where the guy jump up, because when I walked outside of the Stardust, I said, man, I got it. I'm gonna be a Baccarat dealer.
Our next interviewee also achieved an important first thanks to the consent decree. Leonard was the first black stagehand in Las Vegas.
Stagehand is a person, behind-the-scene person that sets, that makes and removes staging for any scene in a production number or a convention or anything else that has to do with theater.
Like John and Jackie, Leonard took a class to prepare for his new position.
We'd have like 30 black kids and 5, disadvantaged white kids in the class. Out of that, we had 5 classes like that. Out of that, I think it was 10 of us survived to actually work in the industry.
Those that survived the class had months of hard work ahead. Acceptance into the union was challenging. And once he finally began working in the industry, Leonard found not everyone accepted him.
I went to work at the Junes one time. The guy told me I couldn't come on his stage because I was black. I couldn't come on. I said, but I've been dispatched. He said, I don't care. He said, we'll work short. And they would told me, there's no fighting, there's no argument, there's no nothing, you do nothing. You just contact the business agent, he'll take care of it. Business agent straightened it out. The next night I was back out there working. But I had some interesting experience. They had a bear in the show. And he used to ride a little moped, put this bear on a moped. And what his treat was, what do you call this thing with a hole in them? Lifesavers. He liked lifesavers. So they told me one of my cues for the bear was, stand there, when the bear comes off, pulls this curtain. And you have lifesavers in your pocket, and you give the lifesavers to the trainer. And I said, okay, so I'm standing there. I'm waiting. I'm starting to feel uncomfortable, but I'm waiting. And I move, and here's the big bear paw goes. The bear was behind the curtain. He wanted his lifesaver. I had his lifesavers.
And what did the consent decree mean to him personally?
Money. A trade that I never even dreamed about. I'll tell you what it did for me. It expanded my worldview.
The consent decree changed John, Jackie, and Leonard's lives, but it didn't necessarily help everyone who sought its benefits.
There were times when I felt that things were moving too slowly, and that there was some resistance to compliance. But I felt we had to simply stay the course. We had to be steady. We had to show that there was monitoring ongoing, and I felt that eventually the tide would turn. Things were headed in a direction, and they weren't going to go back.
The consent decree, while imperfect, changed a lot of lives.
Just the fact that it was there and that it gave more possibilities for Black people was a big boost for our community. You can't really imagine, unless you've experienced it, being turned down for a job because of your race.
After decades of discrimination, Las Vegas's powerful gaming industry was forced to change. Another critical change taking place in Las Vegas in the early 1970s was school desegregation. Helen, who was the first African-American woman to become a school principal in the Clark County School District, was highly involved in the effort.
The NAACP had the case against the school district to desegregate the schools according to the federal law. And I testified during that trial. I testified on the side of the NAACP. In our testimony, we were not just saying desegregate. We had done research, and in our research we had written to at least 5 or 6 other districts that had desegregated and asked them specifically for their plans. And this is what we also presented in court, that here were samples for our district to look at, and maybe it would help them work out the one they wanted most.
Eva was also a school administrator during school desegregation. She attended numerous board meetings while the issue was being debated. Various plans were attempted.
We had so-called voluntary integration. We had the prestige schools. The courts did not accept either of those because they did not accomplish what they would call a unitary school district. And so eventually we were stuck with the 6th grade center plan.
The 6th grade center plan of integration was implemented during the 1972-73 school year.
They took all of the Black children from the West Side and divided them and sent them to different white schools all over Clark County by school bus. They took all of the children, Black and white, in the 6th grade and sent them over here to the West Side and made each West Side school a 6th grade only center.
This plan was a great burden on West Side families. Their children were bused across the city for all but the 6th grade. Theron and Naomi were also educators during this period. They discovered that some Caucasian parents also opposed the 6th grade center plan.
How are kids, white parents, how are kids going to be protected? I said, well, like all kids are protected. I said, the West Side, as you want to call it, the West Side is, it's not a criminal's town. City, we have faults. But your child's going to be protected. We're not going to set up certain standards for them. We're just going to treat them as students here. And if we have any problems, you'll be the first to know. And we can handle it.
And after considerable effort, the Clark County School District did handle it. The desegregation of area schools was a monumental task that eventually proved successful. It was now the early 1970s in Las Vegas. The casino industry thrived, and city growth quickly crept outwards across the desert landscape. Life for area African Americans had undergone a significant transformation since the 1950s. The city and schools were desegregated, housing options opened up somewhat, and quality jobs were finally available. But there were still many issues to be addressed, one of them being conditions on the west side. While some see little hope for area recovery today, others see great potential.
Ultimately, I think the community is going to prevail. I think what it needs is right now some very shrewd individuals who would come in, investors and businessmen who would come in and build, businesses.
I think one of the things that have to happen is, of course, it's got to have an influx of investment capital. The West Side for, let's say, an African American businessman, for example, an investor. It could be somewhat similar to a gold mine, a 2016 gold mine.
While today's West Side may not resemble a potential gold mine or the village it once was, there are signs of recovery, of progress, and vitality.
Between Commissioner Weekly, who was then councilman, and Councilman Barlow, they've made some tremendous changes as far as getting some of the fast food restaurants and upgrading the area.
Various buildings have been remodeled and reopened. There are ongoing educational and cultural programs. Streetscapes have been redesigned and cleanup efforts continue. In many instances, it was community action and activism that led to positive transformation. And, as we've witnessed, this was the case time and again over the years. The African American experience in Las Vegas is full of struggles and successes. There's a rich history and culture worth remembering and celebrating.
We have to, for our own sake, know what our history has been, know how we have fought to have our equal rights, and more peace and equality and less harassment.
That's why Black history need to be taught to our African American kids. A lot of them don't know nothing about Black history because where they are now, they think that's the way it always been. It happened. But we need history taught from people who knows history, people who gone through history. People can tell them from experience about history.
African American history in Las Vegas is a collection of connections and intersections. The small historic West Side connected the city's entire Black community in the 1950s and 60s. It was home. Many of the people we've met in this program are also connected by the intersecting events they've experienced. They each had substantial roles in significant events, such as the Moulin Rouge Agreement, the riots of 1969, and the Consent Decree. As we've discovered, their roles were as unique as their perspectives, and it is their combined perspectives, their stories, that help to define the African American experience in Las Vegas.